Hello, my name is Craig Wilson, and I am excited to present to you my for my dissertation on the impact of andragogy on increasing the effectiveness of professional development for teachers, and it is a quantitative study. My agenda is as follows. I will present my problem statement, a quick literature review, get into the theoretical framework, discover what my purpose statement is, talk about my methodology, the results and implications, and finally my plan to distribute. So my problem statement is the following. Professional development for teachers fails to make a significant change in the instructional practices or student achievement. How did I find this out? Well, the research tells us that we spend about $18,000 per teacher per year in larger school districts. That equates to about $8 billion in the US annually. 19 of those contract days are spent in professional development. However, our return is not as good. Only about 30% of the teachers improve on their evaluations. And when they polled teachers who were leaving the profession, 80% of them said that they found that the content professional development was ineffective. So my literature review is going to be concentrating in two different areas. One obviously is on professional development. We're going to talk about why it's effective and ineffective, and then we're going to look into the characteristics of effective PD. And then we also are going to be talking about adult learning theory. There's three accepted models. One is self-directed learning, the other is transformative learning, and the subject of this study is on andragogy. And we'll go into details and explain the difference there. So literature review about adult learning theory tells us the following. The needs and interests of adults differ than those of children. Adults are different physiologically and neurologically. They want more control and decision making over what they learn. They want to be more responsible for constructing new learning. Certain critical events that happen with life's experiences causes reflection, action, and a change in self-concept. Adults need to know the reason why they're learning. They desire practical knowledge and immediate application of their learning, and they are more intrinsically motivated. Moving into the characteristics of effective PD, they are well designed and planned with intended outcomes. For the learners, there's a collective decision-making for their PD needs, processes, and outcomes. It is appropriate to the teacher's content area needs. That's one of the largest factors I've found is many times adults have to, or teachers have to attend professional development that doesn't impact their content area. Effective PD considers teachers' experience and readiness levels. It's active and engaging and hands-on. It's collaborative and reflective. There's an opportunity for follow-up and follow-through. And finally, effective PD has coaches that are supporting the learner through the changes. The theoretical framework for andragogy as an adult learning theory differs from other models because it is both a theoretical framework and it is a conceptual framework. So Malcolm Knowles and his associates identify 6 assumptions or principles that an adult needs as they learn. They want to know why they have to learn. They have self-concept needs. It relies on their prior experience. Make sure that they're at a readiness level to learn. They're oriented towards learning, which means, again, that it's immediate and practical, and they're intrinsically motivated. From there, they took that theory and they turned it into a conceptual framework for instructional design. And these are the 8 different design elements: preparing the learner, creating a conducive climate for learning, mutually planning with the learner, diagnosing the needs, setting learning objectives, creating lesson plans that have activities that are engaging and hands-on, and finally gives the learner an opportunity to evaluate through reflection and critical thinking. So my purpose statement is the following. This quantitative study aims to test the effectiveness of including andragogical principles and design elements for professional development. So getting into my methodology, first I had to decide what research questions I wanted to use and the appropriate design for that. I also selected my site and my participants. Then I collected my data, analyzed it, and determined what my limitations and my delimitations were. So I have 6 different research questions. It looks like a lot, but it's not really. The first 3 research questions are for both the control and the treatment group. So they're looking for differences in the perceptions that the participants had with andragogy principles for research question 1, and then for the design elements for research question 2, and finally the combination of both those design elements and the principles for my third research question. So we're comparing the treatment group's perception to the control group. For research questions 4, 5, and 6, I took the treatment group only and I was looking for certain things. I was looking to see which one of the design elements could predict a teacher's preference for andragogical learning. And then for research questions 5 and 6, I was looking at which one of the design elements or principles could be impacted by either a teacher's age or their years of experience. So getting directly into the methodology of my research design, first I had to create those research questions I just put out there. And what I discovered is those were parametric questions. And so the most appropriate test for those, it was a quasi-experimental study, and it used parametric testing questions or tests for that. I did choose my site and my participants. I designed the experiment. I collected my data, analyzed it, came up with my results, and discussed the implications. My site participants, I chose a district in Central Texas that was representative of the entire state. This was a summer professional development conference. It had 6 different sessions, and there were 5 to 6 courses that were offered during each one of those sessions that were completely the choice of the participants. 30 of those courses were traditional PD, which involved lecture or sit and get type style, and the others were 18 andragogical courses that took into account those design elements and those principles. There were about 120 teachers that participated from grades pre-kindergarten through 12th grade, and they represented all content areas. For my data collection, I used a tool called the Andragogy in Practice Inventory, or API. It had 60 Likert style questions that asked about the andragogical principles and design elements. It also had 6 demographic questions that I needed as well. From there, I imported into a online Qualtrics survey. The survey was completed by the participants for each one of the different courses as they wanted. I downloaded that information into IBM, and then I had to code it by whether that course was a traditional PD or whether it was andragogical. I analyzed the data, and this looks a little extreme, but it's really not. For the first 3 questions, I used an independent sample t-test because I was comparing between the control group and the treatment groups on those design principles and elements. For questions 4, 5, and 6, for 4, since I was trying to find out a predictor of which design element it was, I used a multiple linear regression. For questions 5 and 6, since I was comparing different factors, different age groups, and different years of experience, the most appropriate test was an analysis of variance. My limitations on this was it was a quasi-experimental design, so it could limit the generalization. I did participate as an instructor in these summer courses, so that could create some bias. The participants also were self-reporting, so that could create bias as well. It was convenient because of the site and the sampling of the participants, and some of the assumptions, I had a difficult time meeting them during the parametric testing. However, my delimiters were, I did choose this design because it met the feasibility of my scope, time, and the participation of the sampling. I had my choice of adult learning theories, and I did choose Malcolm Knowles' andragogy. And finally, those demographic factors, I only chose the ones that could be controlled for professional development. And now the fun part, to get into the results. So for my first research question, which compared the differences of the andragogical principles, in every case, you can see that the treatment group perceived the professional development better than the treatment group. Than the control group in every one of those 6 different principles. And overall, you can see the difference here. For my For my results for the second research question, which was looking at those design elements, the way the instructional design was done, again, for all 8 of those design elements, the treatment group showed that they preferred that style of professional development over the control group, and overall, same thing. Finally, when I combined both the design elements and the principles, again, we can see that the treatment group preferred the andragogical PD over the traditional PD. Now, when I took apart and just took the treatment group, and I wanted to see, were there design elements that could predict satisfaction with that professional development. 4 of them came out as significant or statistically significant: preparing the learner, planning the learning activities, and evaluating the learner, with preparing the learner being the most impactful, followed by evaluating the learner, and then planning the learning and the activities were also significant. Looking at the variance by age range, you can see the different groups here. One thing that came out was that as the ages of the teachers got older, the mean came down a little bit. So it was not as impactful. It was still impactful, but not as impactful for older teachers. And that also showed in the looking at teachers by their years of experience. Same thing, the mean was a little bit higher on the teachers who had less experience, and as the teachers became more experienced, that mean decreased. So what are the implications of the study? Well, andragogy is necessary. It's critical for effective PD for all ages and experience levels. And we know that through andragogy, because it is engaging, participants are more likely to become self-directed and reflective and implementing that new learning that could impact student achievement. The other implication we have too is that both the instructional designers and presenters of professional development should become more familiar with andragogy and embed it into their practice. So my recommendations are as follows. Key decision makers must insist that andragogical professional development, whether it's created in-house in the district or whether it's from an external vendor or from an educational service center, that it needs to be andragogical. Teachers also must advocate for their self-improvement and become those co-creators of PD based on their needs. They shouldn't just accept, sit, and get. They should demand that they've got professional development that meets their needs and interests. Instructional designers, coaches, and presenters need to be trained in andragogy. And my final recommendation is you can tailor professional development based on your audience. Take into account their experience, their age, what content areas, and design it around there. I plan on distributing my findings in the following ways. I want to present to the senior leadership team at my school district. This would be a high-level presentation. I would use a slide deck, some recordings, handouts, and I'll also provide them some infographics. Using those same materials, I want to present it to curriculum directors and instructional coaches, but this is going to get at the deeper level so that they can begin to internalize and implement andragogy. I would also like to present this at state or district conferences. For example, in Texas, you have the Elementary Principal and Supervisors Association or the Texas Association of School Administrators. And I would also like to publish this in peer-reviewed academic journals. Here's a list of my references. And finally, I'd like to thank everyone who helped me along my journey, particularly my advisors, Dr. LeCompte and Sanguris, Dr. Smith at the Ed Writing Center, CC Lively, my success coaching team, and finally, my peer writing group. Could not have done it without them. Thank you so much for watching this presentation.